All right. So I think we're going to get started right now. Hopefully, Miles will be able to get his mic working sooner than later. And if he does, we can include him in our chats. So welcome everyone to the Gauss Discord channel. It is August 29th. Oh, is he here? Maybe. It is August 29th. Oh, close, okay. So it is August 29th, 2022. My name is Alex, and I'll be helping out with moderating today's fireside chat. So today's topic is about the future of marketing. This is an amazing subject that I would love to hear a little bit more about, and a big thing that Gauss is contributing towards. So during this fireside chat, we're going to start out with some introductions from our amazing guests. Then we're going to go into the topic of future of marketing. And at the end, we're going to go through some question period where I'll be asking some of the questions from our audience to our guests. Throughout the chat, if you have any questions, feel free to write them in our Q&A board or the stage Q&A, and we'll be trying to go through all of them at the end. So without further ado, we'll be introducing our guests. So first up, we have Richard Baker, aka PCA Richard, on Discord right now. So Richard Baker is a sales and marketing director of Platinum Crypto Academy. Platinum Crypto Academy is an online academy dedicated towards education and training for trading cryptocurrency that has been operating for over 5 years. In addition to the academy, they also have an advertising and exposure arm to the business, which helps emerging projects to get brand recognition and help raise capital investments. So Richard, welcome to Gauss, and feel free to introduce yourself.
Well, I don't really know what else to say apart from thank you for the introduction and thank you for the invite, Gauss, to this fireside chat. Don't really know what to say apart from I've been in the space, as you said, for about 5 years now, trading, investing myself, ups and downs as everyone does. But in terms of a business, we've had a very established business here in the UK. We offer, as Alex said, trading and investment courses, consultative service on people's portfolio. And as a second revenue stream to our business, we operate a exposure arm for investors to really connect with new projects, emerging projects in the space. We do all the fundamental technical review analysis, and we present those to our client base, not as a pump and dump situation, of course not, but something which provides absolute value to our users to do their first step into the space. Many of you here today will probably be investors in the space, probably be traders as well. There's thousands and thousands of opportunities out there. What we do is we try and bring the best ones we can find to our client base, and that's what we do. So I hope that's enough introduction and we can get into a bit more detail.
No worries, that's perfect. And later on, you can just post up your socials on the chat somewhere, and everyone can check it out.
We'll get them linked on the video as well.
Cool.
Yes. So next up, we have MacEwen. Yes, MacEwen. I'm just making sure I'm saying his name correct. But MacEwen has marketed everything from entertainment to consumer goods, and from arts education to investment opportunities. To him, marketing is a rare commitment to continuing a conversation, and he likes to remind companies that the most important thing for brands to do is to connect with people on a human level. Is joining Gauss as the CMO. MacEwen, welcome to the Fireside Chat.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. In my second week at Gauss, still getting my feet under me, but it's been a great exposure to the team so far, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you here. And I believe this is your first Fireside Chat, am I correct?
With Gauss, yeah.
Yes. So next up, I think Miles is still having some small issues, so hopefully he can later on join in our chats. And now he's gone. So anyways, Myles Jenson, who hopefully is coming back, he's a co-founder and creative director of Jenson & Jenson. He has spent the last 6 years within the world of marketing.
I wonder if it's Discord because now Alex is having problems.
I think I'm here, by the way.
Industries.
Oh, we got Myles fixed, and
lost Alex.
And we lost Alex.
A one-on-one.
So he was introducing you, Myles. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me, guys. My name is Myles Jenson. I spent the last 7 years working in marketing, primarily across brand strategy, and social. In the last 4 years, I have set up a creative consultancy. So we specialize in, again, branding, brand strategy, really working with businesses that are looking to have your first mover advantage or really just do something a bit special. Myself and Gary came in contact with each other about a year and a half ago, I'd say. And really just kind of paying attention to what each other have been doing. And recently we've been engaged to work closely alongside Gary and now with Mac as well and the rest of the team to really support the marketing efforts to kind of roll out for this year and moving into next year as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Thanks for the intro, Alex. The point of today's whole discussion, I'd like to talk with some marketing experts in this chat about what we think the future of marketing is. I've talked with each of you at length, over various courses of time. Like Myles said, we first spoke like a year and a half ago. But we've all spoken about what I think the future of marketing looks like and all of that. But each one of you guys, what do you think the next 3 to 5 and 10 years looks like for marketing? How are things going to evolve? Who wants to take the first stab at it?
Sure.
So, Brian.
Marketing, is impacting that. And we've seen such a rapid rise in the capabilities from Web 2 moving to Web 3. And I think what we're going to start seeing as well when it comes to marketing is people really want to be more conscious about their marketing efforts, brands in which they're supporting, but also having more access into a little bit of ownership and leverage over those brands as well. We're seeing more and more brands actually adopt more of a community platform, listening more to their communities when it comes to increasing marketing efforts or even where they focus more of their attention with. And I think that's really where we're going to see a massive shift within marketing is actually brands, instead of making decisions themselves, are actually having a lot of a community value with that as well. I think also when we look at marketing and crypto and also just blockchain and Web3 and what that actually means, I think the accessibility of what people are going to do and actually creating a even bigger creative economy, we see with influencers and whatnot, but now there's actually a whole other layer coming to that with individuals that are able to create their own things such as NFTs or create their own projects where necessarily before they may have had to go through a third, fourth, fifth party. And actually this is going to really, really remove a lot of friction from the engagement from a brand back to marketing or also back to their customers or the community as well.
Yeah, I agree. That's how I've seen this whole thing. Did you want to chime in on it, Mac?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think the community is really going to replace marketing, honestly. And I think it's... Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I just had a different sort of thought on all of that. In all of what you said is true, and I'm 100% behind what you said. And I know, Mac, you were going to say about how the audience is going to be driving the marketing rather than the companies themselves. But I'm always conscious of the data side of things and how marketing used to be email campaigns, direct mail, the companies would buy data and market towards it. But being in the space, I think, everything's changing. It's people are wanting to own their own data. They want to take charge of their online presence. And I think, I don't know how it's going to evolve because I'm only guessing, but I think things will switch massively from companies buying data sets, mass targeting them. Obviously, in the UK, there's the GDPR rules. You can't do that anymore. and it's going to change that the buyer or the consumer or the targeted audience will be opting in individually to the content in some way. And I know that's happening in a soft way now, but I think it'll be more and more. I love the Brave browser. I don't know if any of you use Brave, but it's very much about us as a user opting into content that businesses want to target. I don't really know how to explain it, but I think there's a huge shift. And in the next 3, 5, 10 years is what Gary was just saying. I think that's the angle that things are going to go down for me personally. Ownership over data, ownership of what consumers see, and no real, data just going around businesses and they can just buy whatever they want, essentially. That's just my thoughts.
Well, see, to me, that's not two different things. Those are part of the same thing, in my opinion, because you're going to watch communities, grow around these brands, and brands want to nurture and build those communities rather than just shotgunning out tons of impressions, right? That's been the current goal. Get like a 1 or 2%, click-through rate and then conversion rates and stuff. That's what we've seen, and I think it's going to evolve from that. Did you want to finish your thought, Mac?
Yeah, I mean, I think one good example of how brands are going to be focusing more on community is if you look at the evolution of Google, they started off listening to their community by being a search engine. Their whole thing was just a blank page with a search window. And over time, they took advantage of the value of the internet, which is being able to survey your audience, ask them, what do you want next? And they started to offer free solutions in place of, kind of tried and true tools that people had become used to, Office and whatever else. So they had to start listening at a deeper level. And I think what you're going to see is just the level of listening taking place. I think it is going to replace this shotgun approach and this, one directional conversation that's been taking place from marketing for so long. And it's going to take the shape of a conversation in the form of a community at a one-on-one and, but at scale kind of level, which hasn't happened since the campfire, since the first form of marketing, which was, painting on a wall and, you've got everybody's attention because your survival is on it. So, but yeah, I think we can look at, what's happened as life has become more digital, and just kind of project that into the future and see that humanizing technology is really what's going to allow genuine marketing to take place, or a real conversation between brands and consumers, and the collaborative production process that bringing something into life is now.
Right. And just so everyone's clear of what we mean by the shotgun approach, I'm going to post this in the Stage Board channel. But like the average person in the US and Europe's probably not far behind, sees about 10,000 ads per day, which is just a ludicrous amount of ads. How many of those do you even remember at the end of the day, right? They're just hoping that you see it 3 times and then make a purchasing decision. That's the mentality behind that.
7 to 17 touch points is the average these days. So it's
right.
You only see it 3 times. It's not enough.
Let's see. This is why I'm not a marketer. That used to be a thing. What, a decade ago was the 3?
Yeah. Then I went to 7. Then I went up to 7 to 17. It's like, what? And it's going to keep going up.
Right, exactly. It's just a lot of white noise that people see with ads. It's remarkably, inefficient, expensive. It's kind of telling that over time, the, best return on marketing dollars has been, direct marketing. Mail marketing still has some of the highest return, which is ludicrous. It's an archaic method. But yeah, digital advertising is, in my opinion, going to have to evolve. Not enough people give a damn about it anymore. And they're going to demand more personalized, more intimate relationships with brands that want their dollars. And I think part of what we're doing is, building tokenized assets for those brands so they can engage with them, so they can use those assets within their whole ad mix as part of their marketing dollars. So, yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting 5 and 10 years, and I really don't see, it 10 years from now resembling anything we're used to right now. I think it will happen that rapidly. And at Mac, you and I have spoken about, influencers and VTubers and things like that quite a bit, and how they will, play a role in brands marketing, being a face for them in various channels. And I think, again, 3, 5, and 10 years from now, we're going to watch those influencers, content creators, VTubers. And for anyone who doesn't know, VTubers are live streamers usually who make content with, a 2D or 3D avatar as their on-screen persona. And I think all of that's going to grow considerably. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that what we're going to see is, and it's really the ancient battle between storytelling and the medium, right, the technology. But we're going to be seeing storytellers emerge from everywhere through these mediums, and that is going to fuel a whole new generation of what is expected by audiences and how they expect to be communicated to by brands. So yeah, I agree with you, but I think that who's leading the charge is yet to be determined. It's kind of wild.
What I saw recently was a company called in the UK called Boohoo. They sell women's fashion. I'm not a fashionista in any way, but I had a great conversation with them because they recently sold, which most people probably don't know about, 100,000 NFTs to their current client base. So they could also use that as almost like a rewards card, that if they hold this NFT, they get mass discount on their products across the board. They've already got a huge following in the UK, and it may be more than the UK, but I've not seen a brand execute, a big brand execute that sort of NFT sale. It was only, I think they were 20 quid a go, so what's that, like under $30 a NFT. But when you sold 100,000, look at that, that's a couple of million revenue, isn't it, straight away? And they're getting buy-in from their community. I thought that was a really cool bit of marketing from them, totally under the radar, really, from the crypto space, but as a real brand in the UK selling out to their current community. I haven't seen a brand do that very well, and I other than these guys, there may be more. I haven't seen everything, but I thought that's a really direct shift to a more digital crypto NFT based media that I haven't seen before in the market. I don't know if anyone else has seen anything similar.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Gary. I was just going to say, I totally agree. I think as we're starting to see more of these kind of traditional brands actually taking a step more in towards, and typically that first step is NFTs. But really what that does, it shows the brand is embracing that modern innovation. And actually it shows that they're allowing an avenue for more digital tactics and more digital marketing. And I think it's going to open up the floodgates to a lot of different things. What I think of the NFTs that they're created at the moment, probably not going to be, the use cases that we'll see in 5 years. But, actually they're dipping their toe in the water, whether it is initially as a kind of PR stunt or like you said, to make a couple of bucks. Regardless of that, by engaging our audience into this type of activity.
How do I share a link in this group, and I'll share it so you can continue with that, Myles. I just want to share it so you can see it, and it's really cool. I haven't seen anyone do it at all.
You could share it in Stage QA, or the mods could give you access, the guest and project lead roles access to the stage board. Either of those.
There we go. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to share it before the point got left behind.
No, that's all right. Look, there's definitely lots of different brands that are doing it. I think one of the most famous ones was RFT, RTF, KT,
Artifact. It's
and they're a sneaker brand, and they did a big collaboration with Nike. I think they sold 600 pairs of trainers in under 7 minutes, made $3.1 million. And they're one of the big brands that are looking at that. But there's lots of kind of large leading fashion global brands. Your LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, all of them are doing it, and they're all looking at they're all approaching it in various different ways. And I think it is a really good starting point. And again, I just feel like what they're doing right now is more of a PR thing. But actually, there's kind of four key benefits to them doing that. Not only does it build a severe level of brand awareness for them, it also expands their reach within their audience. They're almost reinforcing what I like to call future-proofing their brand as well, by saying that, look, we do recognise that this is a trend that's coming through right now. This is potentially the future. So they protect their brand image, but also it just gives them a further opportunity to re-engage with the community and promote in-person kind of events, and promote kind of conversation between users. Where NFTs sit right now compared to where, and if we talk about what Gary said about 5-10 years, I think NFTs will look very, very different. But I think it's great just to see that they are being widely accepted so far, and we are getting that mass adoption from very, very leading brands particularly within the retail space.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for a lot of fashion brands to make this leap early and be early on that charge. And I think those are two really good examples, the Artifact and Boo. I don't know how much utility Artifact has put into their NFTs yet, or what their plan is for long-term utility to its holders. It sounds like, and I'm not familiar with it yet, but it sounds like Boohoo is already trying to capture that, right? Pump utility into it. I think that's going to be one of the early dividing factors between which ones have long-term staying power or value and those that don't. Down the road, however, I think that a lot of brands across the spectrum are going to be creating digital assets, because sure, it sounds cool to sell one for $1,000 or $100 or whatever the amount is, but if Massimo, Airwalk, Volcom, any number of brands, launched a digital shirt line, they could sell 100,000 shirts at $1 a piece, and then they're making 5% or something off of each resale, and that's something people can use with their avatars, which I think is going to be a massive industry down the road as far as digital fashion things are concerned.
Totally agree, Gary. This again, I've got no connection to Boohoo in any regard. They're absolutely giving these people an avatar, 25 quid. They sold 100,000 plus, and it's still going. It's creating that engaged user group that I think we first started in the conversation, isn't it? That community, that connective feeling that you've got one, 100,000 other people else have got one. You're getting discount on your products. You're giving that utility, which you mentioned, Gary, again. And I think the next, I don't know what the next step is. No one does, but I'm really liking the buzz around the ENS sort of stuff at the moment. Obviously, it's died down a bit over the last 4 weeks, but I think there's some real utility there behind the connection between your brand name, the domain, and the NFTs. I don't know what that connection is, but I really think there could be, a development there which you'll see brands adopt. But that's just a guess.
Right, and I think to both your points, Richard and Myles, that we don't know what the future of these NFTs are going to look like. That's part of what we're going to be building with Gauss, is a set of NFT protocols that allow for more versatility and utility with tokenized assets, NFTs and the like. And I think also that in the future, a lot of these brands, we're going to need some sort of common threads or standardization or unifying protocols. The internet had, TCP/IP as a unifying protocol, and we're going to need that for these digital assets, avatars, and worlds, because we don't want a digital world filled with islands, that are disconnected from one another. We need paths and roads to get from point A to point B and the interchangeability of those assets. And I think that's something that, we're looking forward to working on. I know some others are working along those same lines, and I think that's going to be really exciting. I'd like all of your input, and I'll, start with Myles on this one, and then go to Richard and Mac. But what are your thoughts on what we're doing, what I see as one of our largest value propositions with Gauss being a curated layer one ecosystem, a safe space for brands and users? What are your thoughts on what we're building, why it's needed, if you think it's needed? Myles?
Yeah, definitely. So, I think just so everyone's aware, my introduction into the crypto space was about 2 years ago, and I kind of came into crypto primarily through kind of just retail investing. But the one thing that really prevented me from getting into the space was just a huge amount of mis and disinformation, and I think that's probably one of the biggest barriers for a lot of people to enter into the space. When we talk about crypto, when we talk about blockchain, when we talk about NFTs, and I think that is a massive issue that people don't recognize, and actually it's very difficult for individuals to get on board. Having a particularly created community and an area in which when brands can come through and they're well considered, vetted carefully, that's going to help drive a lot of security and reliability, but it's also going to allow for much better engagement within that community as well. That you're not being sold a fad token. That you're not being, it's not going to be a rug or anything like that. And I think those are the first types of steps that are going to be really, really important to, one, warm up people, but also create a high level of advocacy. I think the second thing as well is by having really, really clear communication. It's very difficult to build up advocacy if there isn't clear communication, if people don't really know what you're doing, if people don't understand what your services are, what your value propositions are as well. So by having this really kind of transparent arena in which people can engage in is going to be very, very helpful for, one, bolstering the brand and where we want to take it, but also driving that level of advocacy and allowing our community to essentially do the heavy lifting for us. And that's going to be something that is going to be really, really special. That's some of the key areas, I think. But on the brand side, I think the second bit is also looking at, brands want to always be getting on to the next wave, whatever that wave is. And actually they want to be able to clearly understand how can they efficiently spend their money, how can they spend their allocated budgets on this. And actually I think by having, one team, one community, and also very, very clear checkpoints on which brands, the procedures in which we engage them through the Gauss community, that's going to be very, very important. One, not only for us to install the confidence within the brands, but also for retention as well.
Yeah. Richard?
Wow. Okay. How do you follow that? Well done, Myles. Okay, so I'm going to take it from a different perspective. Having worked with 250 plus different brands in the space, they're all emerging. Generally, the ones that I worked with are generally the ones that are emerging in the space. So they've built a project, they're in the space, they are nerds themselves in the space, they want to, create something new. One thing the space, I believe, struggles a little bit with is trust for larger brands that are already established businesses coming into the space. And I think it touched on a couple of points that Myles just mentioned about that individual retail trust coming to the space, but big brands with big budgets with, I don't know how to describe it, but they struggle to come into the space because of the trust. And I think Gary's project and why we're here today solves that problem. It gives them a layer one protocol that's secure for big brands to use. And Gary, you're probably going to have to go into more of the technicals on this, but this is why we need a product like Gauss Gang. We need to be able to attract these major brands to the space. And the problem with the current crypto space is that everything is mired in rug pulls. And if you haven't been it's almost like a joke, isn't it, that if you've been in the space for a couple of years already and you haven't been rug pull, you're not really in the space, and that's terrible. And that's terrible, isn't it? To think that you have to have that badge of honor that you've been ripped already. And I think the solutions that the project here today can present are going to help fix and almost stop those things happening, and that's going to make bigger brands come to the space, more attention, more community, and drive the community, all the communities forward. So that's what I think. I don't know if everyone agrees or not, but again, that's what I think.
Before I get to you, Mac, two things. One, full disclosure with everyone here, we have engaged with PCA and Jenson. However, they could say whatever they want in this. They're not being compensated to say anything here. The number of marketers that I've spoken with and brands that all agree with this line of thinking is not insignificant, and it's the majority of those that I've spoken to. So that's one thing. Two, what he was talking about with, if you've been in the space and you haven't been rugged, it's only a matter of time. It's like riding a motorcycle, right? I think any motorcycle rider, it's not a question of if you're going to lay down a bike at some point, it's when. It just happens. It's just part of that process. It's part of being in this space. And I think this is why this is the perfect time for what we're doing, because it wouldn't have worked years ago, and it will already exist years from now. And Mac, we're bringing on to the team as our CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, to head up this whole effort. So he's not being paid to speak well about Gauss, but he is working with and for Gauss. So what are your thoughts, Mac?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody spoke to it very eloquently. I think that there are some additional deeper applications to this platform that really are inevitable. I think the entire entertainment industry is going to be moving into the blockchain at some point, purely for the simplicity that it offers and for the genuine connection that you can create with your audience. I try to imagine if Prince were still alive, I think he would be one of the first people on top of this to be able to build a genuine audience and release new material all the time directly to them like that. He would have really embraced. And sorry if anybody doesn't know, Prince was a pop artist in the 80s and 90s.
And he was so big for the last couple decades too. I don't think that man could have ever shrunk in scope or scale.
So there's so many fantastic applications to a curated ecosystem like this for creators and for people who are innovators and inspire countless other people. And one of my first goals is going to be approaching the large agencies and showing them how this model helps them remain relevant. Because truly, the big agencies, the middlemen that have been involved in entertainment for so long are not going to be necessary with this technology unless they become part of it.
Right.
So it's part of why I'm here is the inevitability of it. This is just where the world is going. And I see a lot of upside for consumers and for creators. I worry about brands less, but they're the ones who pay me. So, but I think they're also going to see a lot of benefit too. I think there's a lot of transparency that's going to be demanded now because it's available. And the level of market research that's available is also it's amazing. So I am excited about it being an environment that encourages trust by eliminating fraud. There's over $1 trillion every year wasted in advertising fraud. And just to even take a dent out of that would be amazing. But yeah, I've got a lot of reasons why I think Gauss is headed in the right direction. Those are just a few.
Yeah, I think one need only go so far as to Google name an artist or brand or something and crypto, and chances are that it's like throwing a rock in a forest. You're going to hit a tree. You'll find scam tokens, like pick a musician. and chances are somebody else has already launched a token that has absolutely nothing to do with that artist or brand, and in many cases doesn't. Our friends over at 100 Days, they're great people. They're on an ecosystem where they have, a couple dozen clone tokens. It happens in every blockchain to every project. It's part of what I'm looking forward to just preventing as step one of our process. And Pabs in our chat posted about Nike buying Artifact. I actually didn't know that happened. I heard or read rumors about it happening because they were working together at one point. And I think, that's showing that a lot of these brands are looking at this space very, very seriously. If you look at any of the, big financial institutions, they're hiring hundreds and thousands of developers to work on blockchain technologies and research this space more. It's only a matter of time before we hit that mass adoption point. It's just how it's going to happen, right? Like early e-commerce, I've mentioned this before, that's nobody wanted to put their credit card, online. Nobody trusted it. And that wasn't that long ago. That was just over a decade ago. And that's kind of where we're at for mass adoption, because we're still seeing so few people in the space, especially when you look at it globally, right? The whole global population, the largest potential here being the unbanked peoples, the unbanked persons, and emerging markets. That's also huge. So definitely looking forward to all of that. Before we get to Q&A, does anyone have anything else that they want to chime in on, speak about with the future of marketing, tokenized assets, brands, anything? Myles, Mac, Richard?
I feel like we've covered it pretty well. I don't have
Awesome.
anything to agree. Yeah.
Well, I think we'll probably expand on some of these looking at the questions, but I will hand it over to Alex to start with Q&As.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about the mic issue. I don't know what's going on today. But anyways, going to one of the questions, this is the first question that was asked by DeFi Panda. And he asked, what is the average cost for each new investor in this market compared with the cost for a new investor back in January in terms of marketing dollars spent?
So that question is asking what our COCA is, cost of customer acquisition. Especially with Gauss, we don't call our supporters, purchasers, buyers, investors. That's a whole different legal and regulatory thing. But anyone want to take a stab? I think Richard might have actually the best idea of an average, but this is going to vary wildly from project to project. So, Richard, what do you think?
What a question.
What's that?
I said, what a question. Okay.
Right. But yeah,
Okay.
do you think cost of customer acquisition is
what's the best way to answer this? It's really difficult to say in terms of cost of customer acquisition, because the market cycle, are we talking about investors or are we talking about, acquiring somebody using an application? There's a huge sway, isn't there, in terms of what marketing goals might be. So if we're talking about investment, I think yes. I think the cost of acquiring investors in a downturned market is always going to cost more, because the market's not as buoyant, and I think people, many people have got wrecked in the market. Long-term investors and long-term holders, they're looking to buy, but then there's also 5,000 other projects out there which they could invest in. So it's about shouting the loudest and getting through to the right type of audiences. To answer the question on how much the spend is, is very difficult. I don't think I can do that. But I can definitely say cost per acquisition of investor now would be higher. I think that's just logical sense. Cost per acquisition of a user, maybe not, depending on the application itself. If you can help people in a downturn market, you're going to get more users, aren't you? It really depends on the project. Gary, I'm sorry, I don't know what else to say on that point, but
No, I
it's just
think
hard,
that-
isn't it? It's just really hard to.
No, Richard, you're
says it
doing
well.
a great job, but it's so campaign specific.
Correct.
Your audience is going to determine a lot. If you're starting from scratch, you'll start spending a lot at the outset just to build that community, and then start to convert from there. I've worked in investor campaigns, but on the equity crowdfunding side for the last 5 years, or 4.5 years, and there's not. Unfortunately, I mean, there is an industry average, but it comes from such a wide range of samples. The data it's not that it's inconclusive, it's just kind of misleading. And over the course of an investor acquisition campaign, ideally the cost of acquiring each investor goes down. You get a little bit better at your marketing, you get a little bit better at your one-on-one conversations. That arena is a little different because in a downturn market, speaking to retail investors, you end up sometimes seeing more traffic because people are moving away from the public markets, so the traditional markets. So it is a good question. This is very difficult to answer very specifically, unless we get into a few more details and.
Is there any more details we can go on that? Like, I don't really understand the angle of the question. Are they looking to attract more people to their project right now, or what? There needs to be more.
I think it was a
context.
broad, macro-centric question. Panda's one of our moderators, by the way.
Okay.
So I think it was just a broad market question. And I think it'll be interesting as well, like looking back on the data for, these few years in 2025, because this is also crypto's first recession, right? Bitcoin's been around for 13 years, but this is the first time it's gone through a recession. So that might impact things in slightly unexpected ways, but I think you're right in that, when the market retracts, when we're in a downturn or a recession, you're going to have to spend more, right? Capital availability shrinks. Interest rates go up. People have less free capital to purchase things or to invest in something. So I think that's about what we'd expect, but it is hard to say specifically.
But
so what's our next question, Alex?
Okay.
Sorry, Richard, did you want to chime in there?
I just wanted to add on to
Go
that,
ahead.
but on the other side of marketing, we're working with a client currently. They've just raised 150 million. So the point I'm trying to make is that's not from retailers. That's from large VCs investment. Deep pockets pushing money into projects. Just because the market's down, there's still availability to garner a lot of revenue in terms of a raise. So the project has to be right. The timing, you can't do anything about that. If you're launching a project in a bear market, you've still got to put your name out there. You've still got to keep going. And that's all I wanted to say. Sorry, Gary.
No, I like to dovetail into that point. That's something I've been beating a drum about for a while. We could have launched what we're doing in our soft launch MVP in Q4 of this year. We could have done it last year. Technologically, it's not a huge mountain. It would have been the wrong time, in my opinion, to launch last November at the peak and then have our entire community just take hits to the chin over the next year, right? And there's nothing we could have done about that. Every project that launched at the end of last year, it's outside their control. The macro factors are well outside their control. So we've wanted to build this whole time, launch in this bear, because I think it's the better time for it. Sure, it is a little bit more difficult to raise from retail buyers or whatever. As you said, though, capital availability for institutional capital is still there. That's why we're aiming to do our equity fundraising round in Q1 of next year. We also want to be launched. We want to be, have a couple marquee partners that we can announce, because it, puts us in a stronger position at the negotiation table.
Okay, so hopefully, Panda, that answers some of your questions. It is a pretty broad question, but hopefully, maybe some people will have a better understanding of it. So the next question we have is by Squid Hopper. I think that's his name, and he asked,
Wait.
"What?" Sorry. Okay. So he asks, "What do you think the most interesting use case is for brands in this space in regards to marketing?" So I would say he was talking about brands in crypto and marketing.
I don't
Who
know
wants
if
to
we've
take?
seen it yet, to be honest with you. I think a lot of the use cases for how blockchain can be applied to marketing, we really haven't seen yet. Um, that said, I'm also probably the worst person to chime in here. I'm more of a generalist. I've got I can't say a ton of specific experience. I've been around crypto for the last 5 years, but man, use cases. Anybody got any particular ones they want to bring up?
I think quite similar to you, Mac, but I think really for me, Web3 will do today what social media did 10 years ago, all right? And that's really what we're going to see. And that's what we're going to see a lot of brands really kind of trying to jump onto this kind of disruption opportunities that come with that as well. A lot of the content, and we spoke about it towards the start as well, there's going to be two major shifts, personally, that I believe. One will be ownership. So we're going to see a lot of brands and also personal brands. So these are individuals that kind of have their own brands and whatnot. We talk about your kind of Logan Pauls or KSIs, for example. They're going to really retain a lot of control and not have to go through third, fourth parties, not have to go through marketing agencies, not have to go through PR agencies, not have to go through distribution channels. And they're going to be able to do a lot of that themselves. I think the second thing is content moving forward and how we market is going to be far more immersive. And really, that's where these capabilities are going to come through from Web3. Looking at things such as AI, looking at, tokens, looking at NFTs, decentralization, all this type of stuff is where, social media was 10 years ago. And it's just really taking that next natural progressive step. And I think really, we are going to see a bit of a change. It might be a bit of a slow burner, but there'll be some brands that will adapt and move with it, and some brands will remain stagnant and will get left behind. I just think really right now, and what the next kind of 5-10 years looks like, is really, really focusing on understanding your community, understanding what your people are saying about your brand, how can you connect with them outside of just selling to them, how can you build up that level of advocacy. And I think that's really where this immersive kind of Web3 kind of disruption wave is coming, and that's what really, when we're looking at kind of brand use cases, they're going to be the areas that they're going to have to focus on primarily.
Wow, that's an amazing answer that you have given. Thank you, Myles, for that. Just moving on, because I know that we are about almost an hour into the chat, so just being worried about some people's times. If any of you need to leave, please let us know. But hopefully we won't be here just for too long. So the next question that we do have is by Vabe Have. I'm pretty sure I'm butchering your name, but his question is, what kind of sector or industry are we targeting? Are we targeting at first so that we can thrive as we build more and more over time? And the next steps for building a stronger brand. So I think he's talking about Gauss in this case, about which industry that we are targeting. So maybe Gary, you can chime in on to this one.
So our go-to-market strategy is tapping into and targeting some of our warm leads first, which I've been in the event and entertainment industry for the last decade, just more than a decade. So I have a lot of connections to artists, musicians, events, festivals, ticketing companies, that sort of thing. I do have connections with some merch brands as well. But that's primarily what we're going to be targeting first. I think we have a solid plan for some of the first ones we're going to be reaching out with as well. Mac, we can't drop any specifics, but did you want to touch on this one at all?
Yeah, I mean, the entertainment space is a big place that we want to start. Agencies in general, because they're it fits so perfectly into their model, and they will become obsolete if they don't work with something like us. But then also, there's huge consumer product goods companies that have been trying to find, like Procter and Gamble is notorious for trying to fight ad fraud and really wanting to develop a meaningful relationship with their consumers. And while I'm not a huge fan of their product line necessarily, I think that there is a way that companies who've been around so long and that's not necessarily been the most conscientious and responsible can start to learn how to be that when they really connect with their audiences. So, gosh, that's a sort of rambling answer to your question.
It's fine. I think we were talking about social media earlier, and I think that that's an interesting point to mention here as well. Like back in the MySpace days, some of the first to adopt that were musicians. They brought more people, they got eyes on that platform, and then more brands jumped in, and then Facebook came along and kind of dominated over time. But yeah, that's our go-to-market strategy is personal brands, entertainers, musicians, artists, creatives, and then working towards larger brands like Coca-Cola, Nike. Procter & Gamble is an interesting one because they actually just launched a meta test recently. I think it was P&G. They own Mr. Clean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they just launched a Clean with Mr. Clean little metaverse test project not too long ago. So I hope that answers that one.
Another question that he has. This is a pretty interesting question, which I'm not too sure how to answer, but hopefully you guys are able to. He asks, what should be the connect and personal touch, which helps a lot, while marketing and having a more emotional connection, which drives the sales by a lot? Very interesting question. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's always at the heart of good marketing. Like, how do you keep that human connection through the technology, through the medium, through all of the other noise that people are listening to? And that's why I think really good marketing is emotional. You want to understand your audience almost better than they understand themselves. You want to understand what are their dreams, what are their ambitions, what do they want to see the world look like through not minimal effort, but purely by being involved in something.
I think doesn't that lead to the community statement that Myles raised originally, that marketing it's not, and I suppose this brings us full circle. It's not about brands just shouting as loud as they can. It's about brands developing that community and listening to what they want and letting them engage directly with them and being that. Like, again, the analogy from the Brave browser where you receive ads that you want and only look at the ones that you want. Marketing as a whole is going to be, I believe, going much more down that avenue where me as a consumer, I like my Nike trainers. I'm going to go and look at them because I like them, not because I've received 50,000 emails from them saying there's a new Nike released. I've seen it on their Twitter. They've put something out there that a new trainer's been released. Well, I'm going to go and sort after that rather than them try and bombard me with their new release. And I think consumers are going to have all the power eventually where data's protected. Comes back to my statement earlier. Data is protected, control of what they see is protected, and if they wish to allow people to communicate with them, that's what it will be. And if so, some of the models are actually paying consumers to receive their information rather than the middleman or the intermediary bodies that control all the data and all the big stuff like that. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but I think that's where we might be headed.
thank you for that answer. So next on up, we do have Kurt. Kurt has a two-part question, but I'm going to read the first part of it, and I'll try reading the second one afterwards. But his first question is, when you were talking about how things need to be connected by pathways in the metaverse, how do you envision that? Do you think there will be online malls, something like Amazon, or would it be something completely different?
So I think a fair example of what exists in my head, and maybe it's because of sci-fi and all that I've read over the years, is a lot like Ready Player One. You know, what they have with Oasis, there's a hub, and then that connects to a myriad of environments. In Snow Crash, the book that actually coined the term metaverse, it's one digital massive landscape, right? It's infinitely large and everything exists within it, but there's little small microcosms or communities or areas within that. And that to me is kind of what the metaverse will end up looking like, right? You'll have Disney. Disney will have its massive amount of IP that exists within their digital ecoscape or digital environment, or connected environments, because they very well may have more than one. And then you'll have other IP, other games, other environments that have theirs. But I believe that in the long term, users should and will be able to, travel across them, explore between them, bring assets and avatars and things between them. So that's kind of what I meant by that.
He also does have a follow-up question, and I think you might have touched up on that. How do you see ads working in the metaverse? Will there be pops up on the screen or billboards and blimps in the metaverse? So what Gary was saying before about Ready Player One, if you guys don't know what that is, I believe, a movie. If that's what you're referring to, Gary.
The book first, but yeah.
I never read the book, but I like the movie.
Really good, actually.
Yeah. But anyways, in that movie, it incorporated a lot of different characters from different universes, Marvel, DC, what's that fighting game, Street Fighter or Gundam or all that kind of stuff, incorporated in one whole metaverse. But just to reiterate his question, how do you see ads working in a metaverse? Like, would it be something like that where you see all these different types of characters, or would it be just pop-ups, or billboards in
I'll say two things about it before I hand it off to get somebody else's input. One, I think that will happen, will exist. It'll look more like item placement or just having things, though. That's part of what I think, it'll look like. Second thing, I think that a lot of brands are going to try to market in the metaverse and in these digital spaces poorly at first. They're going to try to use traditional methodologies, and it won't work or translate well. Similar to how they're going to try to use traditional market practices like revenue streams and whatnot. With Steam taking 30%, I think you're going to see a lot of that try to translate over and then fail miserably until it succeeds, or until groups like ours step in and say, yeah, we're just taking, this very small percentage. So who else wants to take a stab at this one?
I mean, I don't think I could have said it any better. I think initially the metaverse will look a lot like the actual universe, and it will fail miserably, and then creative people will look at what can this actually do? How do we tell effective stories through this medium? And it'll evolve, and a lot of the evolution will take place from unexpected people, from small voices. So I think that's where I'm looking to the most is, for innovation in marketing and in the metaverse is, who are the people that naturally, organically are gathering an audience, and why? And then what's different about what they're doing here than in the real world, and how do we amplify that?
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think again, this is a bit of a stab in the dark, but just from how I perceive it, I think probably the biggest influence that will affect in regards to marketing within the metaverse is going to be actual influence, so actual influencers within there. It's a status thing if you wear Nikes or a Rolex in real life, you're purchasing those because it's a level of status. And within the metaverse, you have the same ability to do that just through digital assets. So I think actually what we're going to see is a lot of people in the metaverse when, obviously Nike have done a huge shift into that, and they're going to start releasing, some of their own branded products. And as more and more brands kind of come into that space as well, I think people who will have their avatars will then start to be buying up, and just like normal, be buying up branded goods within there, and in turn that'll create its own kind of microeconomy of what is hot, what's not, and in turn, which brands are going to be leading that charge. I think that's going to be a really, really effective tool of essentially coming from the ground up, and allowing, people to actually do, as I mentioned earlier, do the heavy lifting for you. And I think that's probably going to be one of the most influential things when it comes to advertising, specifically within the metaverse.
Richard, I'm not sure. Did you want to add on to that too?
I think everything everyone said, it's just like spot on, but you could do the flip side, I suppose, to play devil's advocate. The real world, or the physical world that we're in, do we not think that being in the metaverse, most things that are in the physical world, so all the brands that we've mentioned, the big brands across fashion, big brands across sports, every sort of, Marvel, DC, all these things, don't we just think that they're just all going to be popular in the metaverse as well, because it's what people like? So I don't know if there will be that much difference potentially in how we market, how they do things. What works in the real world, are we saying is not going to work in the metaverse? So I don't know, like, if you want to sit and watch TV in the metaverse and see ads on the TV in the metaverse, isn't that going to be the same thing? I don't know. I just question if there is going to be a difference. I think brands that work well outside of the metaverse will work well if they get it right in the metaverse. I don't see there being too much difference, to be honest.
Right. I think my response on that was that, I don't think it's any big mystery that I'm not a huge fan of current or traditional marketing as it exists right now. I've said that plenty. I believe I've probably said that half a dozen times in conversations to each of you. And I think that's part of my point. Like, if you put up billboards in the metaverse and you're flying by on your Tron bike at 150 miles an hour, it's not going to matter, right? And I think that's what I mean by a number of them won't get it right.
If you're zooming by in your Ferrari in the real world, it doesn't work, does it? But
Precisely, that's my point.
It still gets ROI for some advertisers, otherwise it wouldn't exist, would it?
Right, but that's my point, actually. Like, that makes my point exactly, and that the real world, I think that ROI, you're looking at things with, you spend $10 million on marketing something with a lot of traditional methods, and you're expecting a 1 or 2% click-through rate or conversion rate or what have you. That's remarkably low. That is so incredibly inefficient. You could, in the metaverse, instead spend that $10 million producing digital assets that you give away to your most loyal audience already. That they're going to wear your shirt, they're going to wear your shoes, they're going to be reminded you're bringing them into your community and rewarding them for being part of your community. That's where I think that difference lies. And
Gary, isn't that, again, devil's advocate to that as well? Isn't that the same as Red Bull sending a crate of samples out to random people on the street?
Right,
just
I
giving
would
out
agree.
your brand. And isn't that just good marketing in the real world? I just don't see there being much of a difference for me.
But you just said it. Good marketing in the real world, right? I think reward programs, loyalty programs, things like that do have a higher rate of return, and that they don't exist in brands' ad mix enough today.
Agreed.
And that's something we want to see change and push with tokenized assets. Like, I think we're agreeing with each other, not that you're playing devil's advocate.
No,
I think you're making that case.
I do agree with what you're saying. I think what I was trying to articulate was that I don't think that the ways that are successful in the real world, shall we say, are going to be very different from the real world success in the metaverse. I don't think
right.
I don't think there's this special key that the metaverse will unlock some new way of marketing. I think people will essentially, I don't know, connect with what works well in the real world, and what works well in the real world will potentially work well in the metaverse as well. I think that is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I do think just it's not that I have to get the last word, but I do think that point, however, I don't agree with, because we watched an entire whole universe of marketing be created around Google and search-based marketing and social media and social content marketing. And I think we're going to see similar with the metaverse.
So like a new innovation,
we have seen an effort at a metaverse before with Second World. I mean, that was a massive effort from big players. They put lots of dollars into it, and then it was gone.
Well, Second Life is still around, actually, and they're talking about how they're going to try to evolve to be the metaverse, because arguably they have been working on it longer than most.
I agree that initially the metaverse is going to look a lot like what we're used to, and I think over time the creativity available there will help us uncover deeper levels of listening from brands to their audiences, which we haven't really seen yet. And that'll be the main change.
I think we only have one more question left, and we're going over time. Is everyone good to go for another 5 minutes?
Got me.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So the last question is by Pabs. He has a pretty long one, so I'm just going to try and make it a little bit shorter. He says that regarding mass adoption and the current reputation, the fact that you guys already call being rug a crucible of joining this space, I think we need to outgrow the current level of garage box professionalism that many projects have. So how do we, as a crypto community, market ourselves to outgrow this, and how do we grow trust?
So I don't think that most blockchains are concerned with outgrowing that. I don't think, like, decentralization as a whole allows for that, encourages that. And I do think that that's needed in that space. I think that DeFi will continue to exist in a similar manner. It's going to be a lot of people starting up teams for the first times in their lives in many cases, and throwing spaghetti at a wall until something sticks, right? That's part of what that whole space is and part of why it exists. The answer and solution to that is what we're doing. So this is a great question even for us to close on, that Gauss, is going to have a process by which those smaller projects can apply, and we will sort through them and say these are good, these are bad, move them on to the next step of KYB and vetting, and then they'll go through our legal process, and then they'll go through a tokenomics development process, and then they're going to go through an auditing process. There's a lot of steps that we're looking at putting these projects through that I think will have a much, much higher quality of those small projects launching with Gauss, because that will be their crucible, of launching on Gauss. It's not going to be some big 6-month affair, but it probably will take 4 to 8 weeks on average is what we're anticipating as we're building these processes out. I think go ahead.
Gary, you spot on there, mate. Honestly, I think one of the other major points, though, is that we're in an emerging market. And even in the traditional spaces, you get startups, you get failures. Whether it's intentional or not, these things happen in every space. In an emerging market, more so. And without these people trying and failing, we're never going to get... And I'm glass half full type of guy. Obviously, there's those nefarious individuals that write a white paper and just claim they're going to be doing things and they don't do anything ever. And yes, there's those sorts of people. And I think you guys, Gary, are going to help solve that. But what I really don't want to see in the space is a stifling of regulation. And I know I don't want to really go too hard on this, but there's a lot of great people out there developing, failing, and they'll eventually get to something which is the next, I don't know, what can you say, next Twitter or something, I don't know. But I really think that what you've got is a great solution, Gary, and not just because, what you said at the beginning, full disclosure, we're working with you, but because it's needed in the space. I just hope that projects are able to get through your scrutiny that, are great, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the intent there is not to set up a wall that nobody can, get through our gates. However, it is for us to do as much as possible to provide a safe, community. And for those that do make it through, and each of these steps, we're looking forward to being able to give them tools to succeed as well. Like if somebody does make it through this process, we're going to help them plug into legal support and marketing support, auditing services and coding support if they need it. Like that's something else we're looking forward to being able to do as a layer one ecosystem. We'll be able to help them with liquidity. And I think that'll be amazing for a lot of small projects. Yeah, it's basically incubating a lot of projects. That's what I'm looking forward to doing. I'm just not calling it incubating because I think that puts kind of the wrong spin on it. And if we have 10,000 projects apply for Gauss and we only accept, 100 to 1,000, I suppose those might be similar metrics to an incubator or something, but just not how exactly I'm looking at it.
I think we try and do a similar thing at PCA, Gary, not to the extent that you guys are going to be doing, of course, but we don't want to be working with projects that we can definitely see are just rubbish and just for a quick buck. There's no point in that for us. But it's very difficult, and I'll be open about this. We've worked with some projects that have just disappeared on people. It just happens in the space, and I really feel sorry for the people that invest in those projects and so on. And it's very difficult to pinpoint some of these sometimes. So I don't envy you, Gary, and your team at all, because we only want to work with quality projects too. But we've been over the last 5 years, we must have come in contact with maybe, 10, 15 that have really just totally just gone past what we can sniff out, if you know what I mean.
No, and that's a worthwhile point as well that I think it would be naive to say that we're going to get it right 100% of the time, right? I'm not saying Gauss will be a scam-free, fraud-free ecosystem doesn't mean that one will never exist, because chances are somebody's going to try, they're going to do well, they're going to get through our process, and then they're going to, do whatever the hell they do. However, we will also be in position then to hold them accountable.
Yes.
Our whole last Fireside chat was about accountability for this reason. I'm not looking forward to having those fights, but I am looking forward to being positioned for Gauss to be positioned to protect our other partners and our ecosystem and our users. And I think that's something no other blockchain has done or realistically could do thus far. So all of that stuff I'm really excited about. I know you said you don't envy us for the process. I agree. It's not going to be, for being such a big cornerstone of everything we're doing, it's not going to be easy at all. But I think, that's where part of it lies. Fortunately, however, large brands or household names, musicians, things like that everyone would recognize, we don't really have to do all that with them, right? Like there's going to be an amount there to making sure that there's value alignment, because there are going to be some individuals or brands that we will likely decline for a good long time because we want to launch with solid people first, right? Like money, I think, is easy. Large brands, there's tons of them. Good people, it's harder to find. Right, that's a different level of quality that we're looking at building with that side. They don't have to go through KYB per se, but they do have to pass muster for the core team and make sure that we all agree that they should be somebody that we're working with.
I think that is a very great way to kind of end this off. I think it's been almost an hour and a half into this AMA.
Yeah, it's been our
sorry.
longest one yet.
Yeah,
Sorry,
the
guys.
Fireside
Not
chat.
sorry.
No, if anyone has any like closing remarks or anything that they want to say, I think this might be the best time to do it now. If not, well, we might just close the chat.
Well, I
I'm
want
gonna-
to say thank you
I
to
wanna-
each of you guys. Go ahead, Mac.
I want to thank our guest.
Yeah.
You guys have been fantastic. And this has been a really a great conversation with lots of depth and body to it. But more than anything, I really want to thank our community. I'm brand new here and just totally thrilled to see how involved people are in Discord and see how the NFTs, kind of flying off the shelves. And it's really amazing to see people believing in something this futuristic and this visionary at this level. So just wanted to make sure I said thank you to the community.
Yeah, thanks, Mac. I think you're going to end up having fans of your beard, by the way. We're having Beard Gang. That's going to be a thing.
I think, we might need to do just an NFT on the
beards.
beards alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beard
Should
Gang
figure that out.
NFTs. All of us here. Alex, we got to get you a beard. Myles and Richard have beards. Mac and I have beards. We got to get you a beard, Alex.
I don't think I'm genetically able to do that, but I'll see what I can do in the future.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining. Richard, Myles, always a pleasure. Mac, I'm really, really looking forward to having you on the team for a long time to come and, doing all the great things we're going to be doing. And thank you to everyone who's listening in now and on YouTube. Have a great day, everyone.
Yep. So again, we're gonna have this recording on YouTube shortly. Thank you everyone for joining, and stick around. I'm gonna play some outro music. And again, thank you for everyone joining in.